Welcome everybody to this month's edition of the Wellness Policy. My name is Wai Ting. I'm joined as always by Jordan Goodman. What's up, Jordan?
Yes. Good to be with you, Wai. We've done a full year of these.
The 12th edition. We started in January of this year, and this is the last one of this year. But
I think it's the 11th one, to be honest.
oh, is that right? What happened? Did we skip
I think
one?
sometimes it took 6 weeks, and then when you kind of add that up, we took a month off.
Okay. Well, totally screwed up the what sentimentality there was in this episode, but that's okay.
But we started in January, and we're finishing in December. That's a full year to me.
Yes, it will be the last one of this year, but for this one, I think what makes it special is not just the fact that it's the last one. This is one where I'm going in completely cold. I have done zero preparation. I have no idea what we're even really here to talk about, but I'm also not that concerned because we are going to be joined throughout the course of the podcast by the post wrestling audience, the post wrestling community, the people that typically are here every single month, and some of you may be new faces, but I'm hoping to get interaction from all of you at any time. So I'm not going to do the whole hand raising thing. We're inviting you guys to keep your mics, unmuted the whole time if you really want to, because this will be very much a crowd participation episode, won't it, Jordan?
You're the boss, Wai.
Okay, so yes, it will be then.
Yeah, I think for me, especially it's now been a full year since you and I were having discussions about, do we want to do this? If so, what could this look like? And I know at least for me, I wanted it to be a community project. That's why we have always recorded live in Zoom. We have a full room of people, part of the POST Wrestling Café with us right now today. And I think the heart of the show the past year has been especially the back half of these episodes where we're connecting and hearing the experiences of those in this post-wrestling community.
Completely. Yeah, it's always been the most, enjoyable part of the shows for me is to be able to hear, everybody and not just me or you talking into the vortex. So, with all that said, what exactly are we here to talk about today, Jordan?
So I think the general theme is the past almost 2 years, we've been through this absurd pandemic era, if you will. And because of that, clearly there's been a lot of suffering and heartbreak and inconvenience. But perhaps it has offered us opportunities of reflection and forced growth and change, often for the better. And I'm thinking today we may look at some of those more positive things, even if they were hard-earned over the past year plus.
And would you like to start? Or would you like to invite somebody else, Jordan?
Let's put it this way. The wellness policy would not be existing if it weren't for this pandemic. I believe that. Much of my life and the work I was doing day to day was taken away, especially last year. But still, we're feeling the effects of this year, even as, at least in the States, but I know throughout the world, there's another wave of this virus being passed along. So I spent way more time on the internet. And even just socializing with people that I typically wouldn't have, you being one of them, Wai. And the wellness policy has been a blessing in my life. And if it weren't for this pandemic, I don't know if this blessing, and even more generally, the friendship that I've cultivated with you over the past year and a half, would be a part of my life right now. So for that, I am grateful.
I completely agree. Obviously, it's kind of strange for me because the big shift in my life into this sort of lifestyle came when we started post wrestling, where I very much at that point kind of developed a work from home routine, and therefore when the pandemic began, I think I was expecting a lot more change than there actually ended up being. But if you're listening to this, that wrestling has not stopped at all. So it felt very much like my routine was in fact similar. Now, what did change, of course, was I think the involvement from the audience and from the community, and things like the Discord, things like this. Starting off, I've definitely felt a lot more engagement from people and a lot more regular contribution from various people. So like everybody kind of like living a similar lifestyle to what I was starting to get accustomed to definitely has, I think, made a difference in there's so many negatives, but to pick at the positives, it would certainly be something like that.
Certainly, and I also want to offer this, and perhaps it's another way in which those joining us can share whatever they'd like if they don't want to just make it pandemic centric. But for me, this show in particular has meant a lot to me. A lot of those listening know that I worked for Ring of Honor for a few years. In addition to being involved in pro wrestling in various ways for the past 20 plus years of my life. And I chose to leave Ring of Honor. I was happy to leave it, but I felt something missing. I wanted to feel connected and, more importantly, contributing to pro wrestling in a meaningful way. And this allowed for me to do that. It also allowed for me to contribute to pro wrestling in, let's say, a more non-traditional way, where we're building community and talking about things like mental health, which is very important for me as well as a licensed mental health clinician. So, if there's anyone out there that also wants to share perhaps what this show has meant for them or in what ways they've engaged with it, I know Wai and I would certainly be interested in that. We have someone, his name is Dickie Bird. I believe he's in Australia right now. And he woke up bright and early to join us, Wai. So I'm very interested. And this is the first time he's been on this show. Yes, Dickie?
Long time, first time, long time, I believe the saying goes, yeah.
Well, you said it. Thank you for joining us. It's 6 a.m. You woke up for this.
Yeah, I woke up for this. It's a little easier than the previous time of 3 a.m. So that was the key reason why I wasn't able to join in. But I've been promising that I will make it, and I got in just at the finish line of the year.
I'm glad you're here, first of all, Dickie, and publicly, thank you for all the great work that you've been doing for everybody in the Post Wrestling family over the past year. But yeah, specifically, I would definitely, consider you as one of the names that I think, I think I remember your name actually just, from the Patreon, but like, your involvement, I guess, has certainly taken a huge step up. Over the past year, doing so much for the Up Next guys and then for us as well. So, are there certain things that maybe motivated some of that over the course of the past year and a half or so?
Absolutely, and I thought it was one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to make an appearance today, because I guess like living here in Australia has been completely different to what it's been like in the US and Canada and the UK. Obviously, we all got locked down at the same time. You guys got locked down March 2020, that's the month and that's the year. But I guess, and I can't speak for the entire of Australia, but for the most part, Australia and New Zealand were kind of like regarded as these sort of pandemic darlings that managed to snuff it out or eliminate it, suppress it, whatever you want to call it. So much so that I believe like New Zealand was one of the first countries to open up to like full capacity stadiums for rugby, without people questioning, oh, should they be doing this? Because there was no virus. And here in Australia, it wasn't too different. So we were in lockdown for 3 months, we came out, in around about July 2020. And we went back to work. I spent the lockdown working from home. I was very, very lucky that I, didn't get too displaced. Really for 3 months, it was, pretty tough, but really at the end of the day, actually, it was straightforward. So come out, July. I know that, the state of Victoria where Melbourne is, and, shout out Rory. I know he's a community member probably listening to this. They experienced a bit harder of a time with some out and so forth. But where I am in Queensland, it was 3 months, and since July 2020, we haven't had a problem. So this is not me rubbing it in though, because the most interesting part of all of this is that I went back to normal life, and most Australians, celebrated that, and look, so did I as well. But I am very much tied to a lot of stuff that happens over in the US, happens over in Canada, happens over in the UK. I watch wrestling, and here we are, everything's opened up, but all the wrestling is still in front of empty stuff, and talking to you, well, not talking to you, listening to you guys and listening to Davey and Braden, I guess what started to happen was I started to get a sense that I was missing out on what everybody else was experiencing. And this is where I think some people might listen to me and go, man, this guy, he's lost it, he's loopy. Because I felt like I was robbed of something that a lot of people, especially creators, had to do, which was kind of like get thrown in the deep end. I think Davey Portman's probably like a really good example of this, where he was displaced and he just kind of like, what am I going to do? I got to do something, and just sort of started throwing stuff against a wall, and ended up kind of building this community. And it was a community that I really wanted to be a part of, but my life had kind of just gone back to normal, and it took a while. Obviously, it was I guess a bit of a slow burn, but I started to get Stockholm syndrome and wanted to be actually back in lockdown with everybody else. So I guess what ended up happening was I became world champion for Up Next, because I was like, I want to talk to these guys. I want to, whatever. And I did I did the movie with them called Office Space, where I basically talked about how much I hated my job. Which is kind of shitty, because there was a lot of people who were, having tough times and stuff like that. And here I am, like, wanting to get rid of it. But it really started this swell of kind of like a midlife crisis, really, or a breakdown, whatever I experienced, to the point where it kind of got to March of this year, which is when I sort of snapped out of it and said, I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I want, it's not that I want to be back in the pandemic, it's that I want to be more creative. I'm not creative at work anymore. I'm in a rut, clearly. And that's sort of when I hit up Davey and Braden and said, look, this is what I do. This is what I do for a living. Do you need anything? Does John and Wayne need anything? Does John Cena need anything? Just let me know, whatever. And that's, when Davey said, oh, well, we've got this WrestleMania show, Up Next Mania show coming up next month. And the rest, the rest is sort of history.
So simply through just frustration, it sounds like at your day job, and wanting to be a bit more creative, very productively sought a connection to give your skill to, I guess I speak for them, and I speak for all of us, that we're really grateful that you decided to choose us, because it's not usual where I think, like, people that are so talented are just willing to, like, hey, message a random podcaster to say, hey, can I like do what would otherwise cost, hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of like quality of work to, for you guys, and you're doing it all just out of love.
First of all, thank you, Wai. I still kind of get a bit weird when people say nice words and stuff like that, as I think a lot of people like me do. But look, I think, to be honest, one of the funny things about the pandemic was actually that pre-pandemic, I didn't think any of you guys needed anyone like me. And I think mostly just because video wasn't, it wasn't as prominent as it is now, it was a lot of audio stuff. And so it never occurred to me. It never even crossed my mind that, oh, I could be of service. I have no interest in being like a voice personality. So I wasn't, trying to do any of that. But yeah, after obviously seeing a lot of video stuff going out, it kind of clicked at a point where I went, yeah, maybe I can actually help with something. And that's where I just put my hand up and said, let me help. And it makes me extremely happy. This is the other thing too. Like, you talk about money, and you got Wai, you and John on the last Pollock and Ting talk, you kind of talked about your priorities with post wrestling and stuff like that. And, I very much share that in the sense that I can do other things for whatever, however much, it doesn't matter. This side of it, I do to keep me happy. And yeah, I'm not interested in slowing down if it puts a smile on my face and see people with comments and stuff like that, about the news thing. I look at some of the YouTube comments and stuff, and it's very nice. And, so I'll keep going, and until someone tells me to stop, I'll keep going.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to tell you to stop. Other than you, of course, whenever we hope you're active and taking breaks and whatnot. But we've been incredibly lucky with like that. We're surrounded by people that are willing to just kind of offer what they can to building what we just kind of got the ball rolling for. So, and that includes you, of course, includes you, Jordan, includes like, Bruce and David with doing postmarks. Which is there's a new edition coming out this Saturday Saturday evening with Hansi, I believe. But we also have the first guest of Postmarks that was featured, and he's joined us here too with our man Neil Flanagan. Neil, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, guys. How are you?
Great, man.
Pretty well.
Good to be with you.
Yeah, not bad, man.
You too.
Thank you for making the time.
Not at all. It's a pleasure. And that sort of is where it starts for me. I mean, I've been a fan of you guys for a long time. And by you guys, I mean the whole Post family and the Up Next community as well. There's a big intersection in that Venn diagram. And I suppose to go back to the original question about learning or what are the positives to be taken from the last little while, I like Dickie, was basically working from home for a while, and I had a very office-based job before that. And for me, I really enjoyed keeping my own schedule. It's changed a little bit lately, as I alluded to before we recorded, but for the most part, my job entails being given a deadline and I can work to that, meaning I can keep waiting hours. I can stay up till 3 or 4 working or socializing or whatever I want to do, and then sleep in half the day. And sometimes that just works for me. But I guess the real positive I wanted to get to was that I had already cultivated some relationships with some of the other fans / listeners, community members. Brandon's here, he knows. And this year, though, I'm kind of at the age where it can be difficult to connect in a meaningful way with the friends that you came up with, friends from childhood, friends from school, friends from work, university, because I'm single and not a father, and most of them these days are attached and have young kids. So at the best of times, it can be a logistical challenge to get together, particularly if I'm in Belfast or near Belfast and they're in Dublin. And, there's we're not talking Canada level or definitely, Dickie, not Australia level distances here, in the little island of Ireland, but they're far enough away that it becomes difficult to try and get together with people. So I embraced FaceTime, Zoom, Teams, all of those platforms in a way that I really hadn't before, to connect, first of all, with those guys, to keep up with them and girls. But what happened this year as well is that I realized, I made a bit of a life lesson, is that they say that you've made your closest sort of circle of friends. I've read this before anyway, by the time you're in your mid-30s, and that's kind of, going to be, there's a bit of an underline goes under it at that point. I don't think that's the case, at least anymore. I have made some genuinely close, good friends, about half the room here, to be honest. And people, I'm talking about, Dickie just spoke, people that not just I admire their work, and I can say, Dickie, that was a terrific job, and he can say thanks, and we both mean it, but we can talk about fucking anything, and do. And we've had chats at the middle of the night his time, or the middle of the night my time. We're good pals now, and that goes for quite a lot of people. I've made new friends. It's a support network as much as just anything else. It's a laugh. We try to make each other laugh and succeed, I think, a lot of the time, although I'm being very earnest now. There's a lot of just lighthearted nonsense that goes on in some of the open voice stuff and in the chats in the Discord and things like that. So a big lesson for me is to how to make the best of a bad job with the pandemic in these new connections, new friendships, embracing that community, learn lessons along the way. I think in this whole, and I'm sorry if I'm going on too long, but in this whole year, there's maybe been one properly bad kind of experience in that realm. And I'm not talking about like a Twitter comment or a YouTube comment or those things that are perennial on the internet. Everything else has been, meaningful connections between people has all been universally good. And that's a real upside of technology. All you ever hear is how toxic social media is, and it certainly can be. But I've learned through this show, through the output, and through the spin-offs of Post and Up Next and the social platforms that are there, that you can make good, meaningful friendships, even if you're not in the same room, even if you're not in the same country, even if you're not on the same continent. And I think that's kind of a profound realization.
Agreed, completely. And to speak to some of what Neil and Dickie shared, this pandemic, and especially my experience, which was similar to most experience, I was stuck indoors. And like Neil, at least at the time I was single, I was living alone, and it was unsafe to go out. And I think more than half the people I was socializing with lived outside of my country, thanks to the internet. But to Dickie's earlier point of actually paying attention to what makes us smile, to what gives us energy, to what seems interesting, and then being able to direct our attention towards creating some of that in our lives, that's what this pandemic kind of forced me to do. I liked the work that I was doing. It rewarded me financially and otherwise in ways that I felt good about, but I had been doing it for a long time. And there's a reason that I went to Ring of Honor while still maintaining that other work, because there was part of me that wanted more in life. I was still feeling that when that was taken away because it was unsafe to physically go out into the world. It forced me to figure out, what do I want now? What's actually energizing to me? And because of that, I've done a host of many things, whether it's being a bit more public with things like this, bringing back a former podcast that I had, trying some absurdist Instagram live show, which was a huge unlock for me because it allowed me to reconnect with my sense of humor in a way that felt constructive and within my voice. Prior to that, really my sense of humor was expressed through, let's say, like Instagram stories and the band that I'm in. But also, I mean, now I'm like exploring the cannabis space. And that's been hugely energizing for me. I'm spending a ton of my time doing that. And in my own self-awareness, I'm realizing no one's forcing me to do this. This is what I naturally want to do. No different than starting this show or trying to work within pro wrestling or anything that I've really done in music. So to kind of sum this up, I think this idea of asking ourselves, what do we really want? What we want now is probably different than what we wanted a year ago, or certainly 10 years ago. But when we answered that 10 years ago, often we found ourselves in career relationships, perhaps even in personal relationships, and maybe they're not working out for us anymore, and we haven't actually assessed that. The pandemic, for many of us, myself included, forced us to actually assess what's working and what's not in our life. And then at that point, it becomes our responsibility to say, oh shit, I actually am going to be on the hook, take responsibility for this, and perhaps let go of the things that don't give me energy anymore and try to find a way to bring more of that, which does give us energy, into our life. Wai, I'm curious with you because you did say that your lifestyle really hasn't changed that much, given the nature of your work. But I'm curious for you, perhaps what has come into your life that you've noticed has given you energy that perhaps would not have been there if it weren't for this pandemic?
Well, it has changed in that, like, it's gotten a bit busier, but I also feel like it's been positive because it's given me more routine. You know, at the start of the pandemic is when I started to drive, you know, my girlfriend at the time to and from work. She's a healthcare worker, and so you know, I didn't want her taking public transit, and so that really forced me to have to wake up early in the morning, even if it was after, you know, doing a Raw or Dynamite review, and start driving her. And you know, it was definitely a bit rough to start, but it also made me into a bit of a morning person, which I never was in the past. So you know, I know Neil mentioned waiting hours. I don't know if there are exactly, you know, such a standard set of regular hours for me anymore, but I think routine is incredibly important. Especially, I was actually a part of a, you know, like a Patreon actually offers these sort of like group conference sessions, and they recently had one with somebody who is there to kind of talk about time management. And one of the things he mentioned was the importance of having routine and having a schedule when you're a content creator, when you're somebody who's working for yourself, because not having that, you know, you're essentially working all the time, or you know, not like, and you don't know when to shut it off, and that can drive you nuts, or it might affect your productivity, and you're not exactly starting at the right time. So for me, like waking up in the morning, having a reason to wake up in the morning, really just kind of gets me going, and that I think in turn has created a lot more productivity with my input for post wrestling. You know, I don't think the daily updates would really be possible if I didn't have that routine. And really the creation of the daily updates, I think for me is like, you know, further extension of some of that philosophy of wanting to just kind of get into the habit of like, hey, every day 1 o'clock we'll do one of these things. You know, it's also trying to like make us be able to go to bed a bit easier at night too, like not having to cover the news so long. But I think having a schedule is incredibly important, and maybe that's something I've learned during a pandemic.
So I actually want to do a public wellness check with you, Wai. I believe this is the 7th podcast that you've recorded today alone. How are you doing with this new schedule?
Yeah, I've definitely gotten more used to it. There are days where like it can be overwhelming. So, you know, just to peek back the curtain, everybody, we've been recording a lot for the Christmas show over the past couple days. So I think that's just been a bit more tiresome, just because we're having to switch back and forth a lot between like interview styles, broadcast styles. In the middle of like, you know, recording a bunch of these interviews here, we're trying to fit in news discussion going live, and then in the evening doing, you know, a show. So that can be a little bit overwhelming. It's also with the idea that, hey, like we're doing this so that we can take a bit of extra time off. I am also fully like under the awareness that like if John and I wanted to just take the week off next week, our audience would be like completely okay with it. And it's just more so I think the two of us wanting to We reach both of our potential. Wanting to maintain the machine as best as we can. We get a lot of gratification, of course, from it. But I'm constantly trying to negotiate like how much we want to do versus how I feel, and so checking in at least with myself and asking myself questions like what you just asked me, Jordan, is important. Probably something I should be doing a bit more of.
Professor Kevin comes through in the chat saying Wai is going to debut a new show called Silence, where he just sits quietly with some tea for an hour each day. I actually did that a bunch last year. I would randomly go onto Instagram Live, and often with the guest, and we would just share a meal together in complete silence. Again, I was very alone all the time. And that actually was an interesting, fun exercise. Wai, I think if you were to do that, you would have a significant audience, myself included, on day one.
Okay, what would we eat? Would we drink? Like what would we be consuming?
I think you would be constructing Lego in silence.
Yeah. I've had people ask about doing one of those. Maybe I will actually, if it would be kind of fun, perhaps. I don't
Dickie
know.
Bird would watch.
Would you?
He'd build assets for that too, I'm sure.
For sure. I'll put the Twitch stream together for you and everything.
Dickie, like after one of the Up Next games, you did a whole stream just kind of going over like your production creative process as you're putting together some of those videos. I thought that was wildly fascinating.
That was amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
Plug that for those who don't know where to find that, Dickie.
I mean, you can find it on you can find those particular videos that you're referring to on the Up Next YouTube channel. So youtube.com/upnext. But I do I did stream them on my Twitch, twitch.tv/DickieBirdMedia. I would love to do more of them. Obviously, it requires me to do the work first, and tends to be weeks of work for like a 1 hour broadcast of going through the thing. But I that is the one thing that I would happily talk about for a very long time is the work that I do, not wrestling, but the actual the work itself.
Well, I guess an interesting question is, are you guys, people who I guess, do a level of like broadcasting or like, online streaming or Instagram Live or whatever. Are you guys motivated by like how many viewers there are, or is it simply the act of doing it? Like if there were, I don't know, 2 people watching or nobody watching, would you guys still do what you do?
I think it depends whose attention you have. So if I have the right attention of 4 people, I'm fucking good. I had some streams where there were hundreds of people, and that was a different type of dynamic because most of those people did not know me. They were there because of a much more high-profile guest, which created a different creative game for me to play. So it depends, but we have a small, intimate group of people with us on Zoom, and this is lovely right now.
It's absolutely great. Now, I want to acknowledge some of the people joining us right now that the audience may not have heard from yet, but we got Asher in the room. Welcome, Asher. Professor Kevin is marking papers in the background, so I don't know if I would watch a live stream of that, but I'm sure if he explained it, it would be fascinating. Steve, welcome to the room. We've got Kevin SLC here, Chris Tobias, Chris Elliott, Brandon from New Jersey, as mentioned, and the man Scrump, probably very busy at work as well. Feel free, any of you guys, if you have anything to say as part of the conversation, just jump in. It's a very loose format this week.
Wait, to not interrupt you, you asked a question about like content creating and stuff like that, which first off, Dickie Bird, you're amazing. You kill it. We all love you. Just don't doubt yourself because you're crushing it. Hopefully we can work together in some professional capacity at some point. The way you mentioned something about like, would you care if it's only 4 people listening? And like very early on when I started doing this, I definitely felt like a sense of like imposter syndrome in that I would see how many people were actually listening. And it was very much one of those things where I was like, why do this many people care what like Stank and I have to say about whatever Marvel movie came out this week or whatever happened at work. And like, I think for a bit, we almost felt like we had to, like make it interesting, like what cool pro wrestling stories do we have that we can, what names can we drop? But like, again, very early that sort of stopped because like I think with me and him specifically, like it was never anything with like we're gonna be the next Joe Rogan, we're gonna be the next John and Wei, like nothing. It was just let's just do this. And I feel personally that's when I've had the most fun. Like don't get me wrong, there's been times where I've tried to, hey, maybe we can get more people to come over, if we interview the Young Bucks or Matt Cardona. But at the same time, like I have just as much fun, sitting around dissecting whatever, Marvel trailer just came out. And I find with like most other content creators that I talk to that sort of seems to be the case. Like, I feel most people, if they're all just about the clicks and the downloads, they don't really project that. It's more so one of those things where it's like, I can tell. And, with the pandemic, again, the podcast, the podcast, it did sort of grow for me. And like, sort of like Neil was saying, you make so many of these like small little internet friendships that sort of blossom into something bigger. And like with me, and I don't know how it feels like to you, like, or like I almost feel like I'm on both sides in that like I'm in this post wrestling community, so I have so many like friends and all that. But then I'm in this like second community where I'm on the other side and I'm the content creator, and these people sort of like see me like that. And like you and John have always been so nice, so cool. Anything I've ever needed, whatever annoying tech question or just the chat and stuff. So I've always tried to be that way with like, people who listen to my show. And like, whether it's 100 listeners or 4 listeners, I think the one thing, especially during the pandemic, it's like that I've learned is like if you're having fun like doing something, just do it. And then, people will find it later. Like don't do 100, YouTube shows or podcasts or anything like that in the hopes that these thousands and thousands of people will come and watch. Like if it's good enough, people will find it later. And just tend not to like, don't stress yourself over, if you're not this like overnight sensation.
I think that's really important, and it's an important reminder to me, going off of Jordan, what you're asking, like about, whether or not, your question was really just kind of checking in on me. But to me, that's more of a question of like, hey, like, when do you feel like you're doing too much? And I think what Scrump just said about, making sure that it's still fun is a very good filter for maybe how much, we should be taking on versus when to take a step back. Because I would say for the most part, like, as Dickie was saying, like you want to do good creative work because it's fun. Like we all got into the creative fields because it's something that we enjoy doing. But there's a limit to that as well. And just because it's a job that I think, we all covet, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be, limiting, I think, our dedication to it. So, yeah, thank you for sharing, Scrump.
And thank you to Scrump. Scrump was one of those people that was like a group of regulars last year in my weekly silly Instagram live show. And me doing that served many functions, but primarily it wasn't how can I grow an audience, it was how can I hang with friends and something to look forward to, because I'm not making plans to go meet at a concert or to go meet at a restaurant because I can't do that right now. So for me, that was throwing a party once a week for a few hours with a group of friends. The nice thing about it is that I could have Scrump from Chicago and others from around the world joining in that. And so for that, I mean, it wasn't like, how do I monetize this at some point? How do I necessarily gain more followers? It's, I just want to hang with people. And that was certainly a fun way to do that.
And maybe like when you say hang with people, like, well, why not just hang? Why why do an Instagram story? Like why why put it out to the world?
Because when you go on Instagram Live, it's a totally different dynamic. So one, yes, strangers can find it, and I've made connections. I don't know if I can go as far as to say friends. But yeah, certainly I've made actually friends through all kinds of different digital platforms last year, whether it was through someone that I meet on a dating app ends up being like on an Instagram live show at some point, who then gets connected to someone like Scrump, and it's just this cross pollination socially. In the past, we just thought our social interactions happen in person or over the phone, and it's more structured. The internet has blown that up. So, meeting someone for coffee in person, or going to a lecture with Professor Kevin at a university, or engaging through a live stream on Twitch, these are all credible ways to socially connect with people. They each have different dynamics and purposes. And that one at that time seemed absurdly interesting and fun for me.
There's probably an openness to it too. Whereas, like, I mean, you could meet up with a friend at a bar, and it's a very private conversation. But like, a stranger's not going to really feel right to come up to you and maybe add to the conversation. Unlike perhaps, an Instagram live or a YouTube stream or Twitch stream or something like this. We're also joined here, just from the room, by a frequent guest on our Post Wrestling podcast and also the featured guest on this week's edition of Postmarks. Hansi, thank you for joining us.
Hey man, what's going on? Yo, I gotta apologize because I just got into the room and my dad was sick, whatever. So I normally I'm up at night, all night, but I was up extra early in the morning, so then I fell asleep by like 9 a.m. and then
Oh God.
I just woke up like 2 minutes ago. I'm like, oh shit, because yo, honestly, because Wei messaged me.
You don't have to
A couple days
apologize,
ago.
Hansi. You could have stepped in here like 2 minutes before we ended. It's all good. So when I messaged you, I mean, I kind of gave you a loose idea of like what we're here to talk about. Do you have something to share about maybe how what you've learned or how you may have changed over the course of the past year and a half or so?
Yeah, no, definitely no. I think it even started before the pandemic, and I think maybe because I went through, and again, I'm not gonna go over you guys know the footnotes of stuff that I've been through over the last decade, and I think being through that and being kind of isolated from that helped me kind of prepare mentally for basically what was gonna happen because again, surprisingly for the first time like last year and a half, there's people that were messaging me like, oh, like because like they actually think that I had more experience in social distancing than everyone else, whatever. And so then I just told them to keep strong, write a journal, try to invent yourself. It gets really hard, but I feel like since from the pandemic and even a little bit before that, I've grown more into like having more empathy for people who go through like for example when somebody's like not doing it the way like when people go through mental health problems and they're free and they might be freaking out and they don't even know they're having a mental health problem. I can now recognize like when somebody is not really is not having a good episode, and like it's not like the way that it's advertised for mental health, so that people start piling on this person. And I feel like I got to explain how that mind state works when you're really that irrational, and that even piling on to somebody is not going to help. So I feel like I can explain like how my mind has been in that kind of limbo for the longest time, while others are going through that as well. Because I see a lot of wrestlers going through that same thing. Like people piled on like Carl Anderson because he said this company stinks when they had a mental health thing going on, even though they just like fired a bunch of employees, and people got on him. And I'm like trying to explain through my experience that like even if you don't feel that Carl Anderson is like credible enough or something like that, this guy has more intel on why this company stinks and doesn't think they're genuine for their mental health stuff when they just fire people like the way they do how they treat people. And and because and people will start weapon people who go, oh, I'm about mental health, but then you're gonna pile on someone for being drunk and an alcoholic, that's part of mental illness as well. Like that's where it goes. So I can recognize that kind of stuff, and I try to like at least try to tell people how dumbed down I was. I can articulate stuff for people so that I see the same thing happening now with how people get contentious online right away. It kind of reminds me of the '90s where we're all contentious. We're all just saying ignorant stuff to each other. So I can feel like I can like give that way, and I feel like I've grown in that way. But you guys have also helped set a good you and Jordan Goodman, everyone that who's involved in post wrestling, you guys have helped give me a good surrounding, so I don't have to be around toxic people all the time. And you guys have helped add to that. And I hope that by me coming on here, not babbling so much, that I've helped you guys see like another view of what mental illness is, if that makes any sense.
It does, yeah. Yeah. Often you I think do a great job of like giving us some really profound thinking. And I think what you just mentioned is something I have to be aware of. If like I have to talk about some of these stories that get brought up in the news, and I'm often like put on the spot to make some sort of assessment. And it's often easy for somebody like me to maybe get emotional and maybe skip the judgment on topics like that. And it's a good reminder what you just said, I think, to just be able to hold back and try to empathize whenever it's possible, and maybe not listen to perhaps the communal discourse as much as maybe we should from time to time. Yeah. Any thoughts, Jordan?
Yeah, well, look, change happens when other people start creating the change. So thank you to someone like Hansi, and also good morning to someone like Hansi right now. You sharing your experience in the ways in which you choose to do helps give other people, especially those that they can't have empathy for your experiences just because they haven't lived them. You offer a new worldview for the people that are paying attention. This is what we all do with the information and the stories that we share with others, whether privately or publicly. It takes people to change the culture of people. So yes, having that for me, that's kind of the point of doing this for the pro wrestling community. Just like it was meaningful for me with another community and podcast to do it for rock musicians in particular. These themes are universal, talking about mental health and well-being. And at least for me, I feel like I've had a career of experience, and also personally just a life of experience thinking about studying, working within the space of mental health. I'm very passionate about it. I know that it affects every human being. And so for me, it's made sense, and it's been important to have these conversations in a public forum, whether it's talking about something like meditation or talking about the ways in which music can contribute to well-being. For many people listening to those conversations, perhaps they've never thought of that before. Or maybe if they did, it was never normalized or encouraged by the social circles that they've been a part of. So Hansi, respect to you, because the only way that others change is if we change ourselves and we share that with the people around us.
No, and definitely, and the thing is, like, I forget who said this, but like the biggest like contribution you can make to society is like self analysis, and that's what I always I always try to do it, and I'm not always the best at it. I don't I don't go about stuff the right way sometimes. I throw tantrums, and the thing is, like, people might think you look bad by throwing tantrums, and I understand that, but trust me, the person throwing a tantrum does not feel good about it afterward. Trust me, like, I have to sit and reflect. If I like say something, like if I have to like go harsh at somebody because I'm getting piled on, whatever, I have to like reflect on what I just said and done, and like I never feel, even if I feel good for like telling someone off, I don't feel good about it afterwards because I'm reflecting upon it, whatever, right? And I'm just saying, we're living in a society now where like everyone's ready to go at each other's throat, because I never seen a time, at least, where we're all so divided by like, not even by politics, race, gender, on certain things like that, but just like by by different fandoms and all that kind of stuff, where like it becomes kind of cultish on some level online on certain things. So I have to still get better, and I got to reduce myself offline. It's hard because everything news is always breaking at any given moment during this time, right? So I got a lot to work on, but I gotta say that being in spaces like this where we're discussing it, it helped me immensely. So I thank both of you, and I thank all of Post Wrestling for being one positive place where I can at least go to where I don't feel like complete shit. At least you know what I mean. So I thank you guys. Thank you for letting me speak. Wai, I apologize for coming a little bit late. I know you don't mind, whatever, but I would have wanted to come in for the whole thing. But thank you for letting me speak, brother.
No worries. Thank you always for being a willing participant. Jordan, one of the topics that we touched on this year was very, I mean, that came up often was the topic of social media, and I think our relationship with it, good and bad. Obviously, like hearing Neil and hearing Dickie speak and hearing like the reason we all exist here is because of social media. So I'll say I think over the past year I've definitely tried to make a more deliberate effort of like filtering out the good from the bad of social media, and being able to kind of retain much of what is amazing about it, and taking away what kind of makes us feel shitty about it. And I think a lot of people have done the same. Like I think a lot of people are a lot more aware of their experience and their relationship with social media these days, and knowing when is too much. John Pollock has deleted Twitter off of his phone. I've made use of Twitter lists, and this is an ongoing discourse, of course. But what insights have anybody in the room? I open this up to, but Jordan, what insights maybe have you had at the end of the year with regards to social media?
Well, so we watched that Netflix documentary. The name's escaping right now.
The Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma. We watched that prior to having that conversation many months ago. And the first thing I did after finishing it was turning off notifications for the social media apps I have on my phone. And that has been one positive change that has stuck. And I have no plans of going back. That was one behavior that I engaged in that took no more than 30 seconds, that was such a significant positive change in my life during this past year. And really, it's like I kind of knew what it did, but again, sometimes we need to hear these things 10 times. Sometimes we need to hear it 10,000 times for it to stick, for whatever the reason may be. But understanding that they were intentionally trying to hook or trap or steal my attention, my greatest currency in relationship to these companies. By turning that shit off, I took the power back, and it's made a significant impact on my life. And yet, look, it comes down to Hansi shared great self-awareness. And that's really what all of this comes down to. I would be interested in having a conversation around self-awareness more generally in the future. I believe that's the whole game. It's because so much of our life runs on autopilot, and that's good. We need that. If not, if we had to take into account every single piece of stimuli, we would go crazy. That's not possible. So much of what we do is autopilot. The drawback to that is that while much of what we do is on autopilot, our thoughts in particular, us not becoming self-aware of what those repeated thoughts often are, of what our repeated behaviors or tendencies often are, that's where we start to get into trouble. So it takes a lot of energy to apply self-awareness. This is why a meditation practice is so helpful. But becoming self-aware, whether it's our relationship to social media or anything in life, to me, that's the whole game. And I can't think of anything that's more productive.
Including thoughts about your career and where you're at, again, going back to what Dickie was mentioning, like being aware of how much time you're spending doing something that, may not be immediately fulfilling. And that, of course, extends to all of things as well. Are you still flossing, Jordan?
I'm not Wai. and that was a lesson. So I know that I can stick to flossing for a few months if I have the accountability. Part of you asked before, like, why go live on Instagram or on any platform? Well, going live with a podcast helped keep me accountable because I didn't want to be caught out on my own bullshit. Now you're doing that to me now, all these months later. Will I floss tonight? Maybe. It's definitely much more likely for me to floss tonight than it would have been otherwise. But again, it's the self-awareness and me being able to choose that. And oftentimes, newer behaviors or habits, like, it takes a while to stick. So no, I haven't been flossing. But if I really wanted to, I know what to do. And part of that was having it in front of me. Part of that was like writing it down and seeing the days in which I missed and having the check mark felt better, etc.
Well, this typically tends to be the time of the year where like we've just given up on like going like everything that we set out to do at the beginning of the year. Like if we haven't already, right? And if you even intend on like, picking up some new habits, you're like, I'm gonna wait till January. I'll wait till like the new year to like really like go back to the gym again. But oftentimes like I don't even think about like what's lacking. But it's also, I think, a time to remember, like, to be kind to yourself, for not necessarily achieving everything that you might have set out to do. You at least flossing for the period that you did is better than not flossing at all. And now you have the ability to go back into the routine whenever you want to, So that's important.
Yeah, and I appreciate you offering the reminder of being kind to ourselves, because just say for me, continuing to floss was a high priority, but for whatever the reasons may be, there's different resistances that have made it difficult. If I start beating myself up for that or internally calling myself a piece of shit, that's not going to help, at least in a sustainable way. Because
You're
now
a piece of shit for not flossing.
right?
You suck.
Because then I'm fighting against like all these different things. So being kind to ourselves, being our own coach or cheer, dude. Like when I do things that I'm proud of or that are good for me, and I learned this on some podcast 20 years ago. Like I legit pat myself on the back. Sometimes I pat myself on the ass way, and I literally say to myself, like, "Good job, Jordan. I'm proud of you." And I'm very intentional and aware of that because the most meaningful, steady relationship that we'll ever have is the one that we have with ourselves. So the ways in which we talk to ourselves is super important. And I would argue that most people don't spend enough time actually paying attention to what that internal narrative is, to what the internal dynamics are going on. And oftentimes people don't realize that they do have control of that and that over time that can change. So yes, being kind to ourselves, being rooting for ourselves, that is very healthy.
Mm-hmm. We are joined, of course, here by a number of people from the post wrestling community, but this person on the job has recently, from what I'm told, has pulled over specifically to try to engage in this conversation. And of course, this man is in New Jersey. His name is Brandon. Brandon, are you there?
I'm here, but I'm in Pennsylvania. But
Wow.
I am from New Jersey. Do you use a water pick?
I have a water pick. I have a water pick about 20 feet from me, and it's been set up next to the sink since I moved a few months ago, and I have yet to use it.
I love it.
Yeah, I got to get on that. Like, sorry, like, it's a recurring theme of dental health on this show, but like, why haven't you tried it, Jordan? Like, I hear it's a more convenient version.
I used to use it. Yeah, it's infinitely easier and less uncomfortable. I don't know. Again, it comes down to like, I just haven't had enough self-awareness and desire for whatever the reason may be. But maybe we're working through these issues live on Zoom right now.
Dental health is mental wealth.
Well, speaking of the most self-aware among us, Brandon, how's your year been?
It's been consistent. I mean, you guys have. I guess your work has been consistently indoors and whatnot since this pandemic started, and I've been I've been out in the wild. I guess this is probably year 3 now since this thing started. It's about to be year 3. I mean, I mean, like everything, we all have to adjust to how we live in this situation that we're in right now. And what I've learned is that I gotta, well, me personally, I gotta stop being so hard on myself, because
Yes.
that's been a deal with me since I've been a kid. Yeah, like even if I do good things, I'm expecting the worst. So I should treat myself better. That's what I'm learning.
I'm curious, Brandon, when that's happening, are you actually aware that it's happening in the moment, or is it more that you notice after the fact?
Someone, a couple of people pull me to the side and then tell me that I should treat myself better. Like, I'm not gonna say who. They're probably in the room, but and I appreciate their wisdom when they tell me that, because yeah, it sucks. It's one of those deals that I got to be better at. But yeah, even if you, like you said, you pat yourself on the back, and I'm my harshest critic. Like, I think, oh, I got to do something better, or I could do better than that. Which is a good thing, and it could be a bad thing.
Well, there's a balance, right? I mean, we want to have high standards for ourselves. I think we would all want to push ourselves to do better and to perhaps accomplish more and things like that. I certainly have that for myself. If I'm going to do something, I try to be world class at it, and I want to achieve. But I also have to balance that with perhaps practicality and realism, and as we said, patience and kindness to myself. And I'm far from perfect at striking that balance, but I think the point is that I at least have some level of self-awareness where I'm checking in with myself, or I'm being held to account by people that I ask for those conversations, to see if I can strike some sort of optimal balance between the striving and the pushing, while also giving myself the patience and the grace.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know about anybody else, but that whole middle child syndrome, like, you see your siblings do way better than what you're doing, and you get the sense of disappointment, and that's another deal that I got myself going on with and whatnot. But I mean,
just on that though, Brandon, like I had the same thing growing up. Like, my big sister, she was perfect in every way, and now she's into QAnon. So I'm the so I'm the perfect child now, and I didn't even do anything.
I mean, but you see that flaw, you're rising above that flaw, like nobody, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, it's not. I mean, I mean, my brother is kind of a nutty guy himself with that side of the world, but he hasn't gone full Q or full pilled and whatnot. But I mean, it's something that we've dealt with. The holidays can be rough, like last Thanksgiving, which led to some fist fights maybe in our family. But I mean, I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, I'm trying to be better at it. I hate my job, but I have to do it. It's a means to an end. It's a very high paying job. It's been very good to me. A lot of good things have come from having that job and whatnot. But I I look at myself and I'm like, man, I could do. I think to myself, I could do better than that. I wish I can. The persona that I've cultivated, it's kind of ridiculous, but I wish to myself that I could do more with that. But I don't know if I can. I don't know. It's just a mental block that I've been dealing with.
Well, I'm kind of curious. Like, what would you see yourself doing? If you yeah.
Go ahead, Wai. I'm sorry.
No, if you had the option to like, if money wasn't a factor, what would you be doing if not what you're doing right now?
I'd probably be doing like a like a podcast like everybody else. or streaming. Like I envy those people, man, because like it looks like a blast and whatnot. I'm like, man, but and then I look at myself. I gotta, you got mortgage payments and shit like that. They got to deal with and whatnot. And I mean,
So is
if I
it just
could,
the
I
lack
would.
of time right now that's
Yeah,
preventing you?
just yeah. I mean, if I could make the jump, I would, but I feel like it sucks to say it's passed me by. I don't know.
Dude, that's like respectfully, that's bullshit.
Right.
Respectfully, I mean, even if you did it a 30-minute episode once a month, you can do that. And I don't want to disrespect the whatever the beliefs or the resistances within you that start to push back or get fearful when I suggest a possibility like that. But if that's what you really want, you certainly can do that. And what's interesting about you relative to most human beings is that on episode 1, you would have an audience.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well, I'm listening. I thought you were gonna say more.
I thought you left to go start a podcast.
No.
Jordan, Wai, if I can interrupt, I know that with a podcast. So January, Brandon, you're fucking more than welcome to come on because I tell you all the time, and like I talk about it with other people that listen to posts. Like you're genuinely one of like the bright spots to look forward to. Like whenever you call in really feedback, and you're someone who's like so knowledgeable on so much shit that like other people who aren't in secret and groups that may or may not exist, group chats, they're not aware of how knowledgeable and how much you have to say on other things that aren't just to get a rise out of one John Pollock. And yeah, to say like, oh, it's too late or something, like not the case at all, dude. So definitely announcing it here. Brandon from New Jersey will be will have his full episode of a podcast because you definitely are someone who, again, you're a very fucking cool dude and you have things to say, you have things to get off your mind and chest. So come on my fucking show and we'll talk about it, whether it's just us ribbing WH or something, because again, you are someone who doesn't give yourself enough credit. Like I know I'm doing it now because I haven't done it, but you are a little hard on yourself. And I think if Brandon from New Jersey fully did retire, much like your tweets are lead us to believe that the POST Wrestling community, myself included, would definitely miss you being around.
Well, it's very kind of you, Scrum. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but Brandon, can I chip in there as well to say that, like, I remember having this conversation with you very recently. You cracked John up like 2 Fridays ago, and it was just a piece of comedy genius. And the timing then, it was let's end the call, bang. And it's on YouTube for people who haven't seen it. And I mean, John, at the end of those shows, as a viewer, Wai will know this, of course, a million times better than I. Occasionally will give the vibe that, right, let's wrap this up. But you're the one guy, I think, who can kind of just like energize him. And like he lost his shit, and I thought it was really funny to see, because it's not that often he does that. He's not an easy guy to pop, and you can do it. That's a skill.
Well, thank you, Neil. I didn't want to make it about me and whatnot. I appreciate the community. I mean, like some of you guys I talk to like every day. Like some of you guys, like Neil, what an incredible human being. Like he is I think he is, besides Jordan, he is the other shrink in the post community. Like you can lean on, and he'll give you some tremendous advice. And like Dickie, he's an incredible shoulder to lean on as well. And I mean, Scrump is awesome. Like I can name names, and they know who they are. And like it's an incredible group. It's a special group that rivals anybody in this space. So, and it's very appreciative, and I appreciate everybody. So I didn't mean to make it about me, but I'm just saying.
No,
like,
we're choosing to make it about you, because I think you're a wildly interesting subject for all of us. Like we're all engaged in talking about you, so it's our choice to make it. And yeah, like if there's anything we hope you take away from it, it's that you would have an audience because you're an interesting person.
And also Iron Rage. Go ahead.
Can I jump in for 1 second and just ask Brandon something?
This is Chris Elliott, by the way, if you're not
Hi, everybody.
seen video. Hey, Chris.
Brandon, can you stop retiring, please?
I don't know if I can. Maybe. Yeah, we'll see.
If it's a bit, it's a good bit, Brandon.
Thank you. So, thank you. I love you guys. I'll leave it to the
All
floor.
right, get back to work.
We love you too, Brandon.
We love you. I love you guys. I love you. Goodbye.
If I could say something.
Yes, this is
time-
Asher. Welcome to the show, Asher. What's up?
Thank you, and thank you for doing this. This feels to me like a follow-up to the community podcast. But here the emphasis is more about what community and being engaged in a community can do for us on so many levels. From being more mindful of how we take care of our bodies to maybe like being brave to consider things that maybe some people think we're good at, but we're not confident about. And I want to connect it to what we started with COVID and how this time was for us. So for me personally, it was connected to being an immigrant. I've been in America for 6 years, but I'm originally from Israel, where I lived my life most of my life. I'm 44, so almost 40 years there. As a wrestling fan, grew up as a wrestling fan in Israel. But when COVID started, my strongest experience was being away from my extended family with all they were going through. And about a year ago, I had to go back because of health reasons in my family in Israel. It was a complicated time for me because of I had to quarantine there and then quarantine here, and I had to be away from my job for a long time. But that was when I discovered Post Wrestling about a year ago. And I think for me, COVID and all the things we've discussed was understanding that I owe it to myself to be a part of a community that I really feel strongly about, that allows me to experience moments with people that are real for me and them on a very deep level, which is something that I maybe didn't have the courage to do, just a little like Brandon beforehand. But throughout this year, especially with the wellness policy, finding out that there's a podcast or a website about wrestling that also deals with mental health was such a big moment. Was such a strong moment for me. And then with all the Simone Biles effect and Eddie Kingston article, it all that became so deep and so real for me, and having a place to share it here with people who it is as meaningful for them, to read what Eddie Kingston wrote, or that video where the AEW wrestlers talked about their experiences with depression and anxiety. That gives me courage, and that gives me strength. So I more or less in the last year, I minimized or eliminated my presence in most social media platforms because they were not helping me, and at the same time slowly getting more engaged and connected into communities that I take a positive reinforcement from. And this is like an opportunity for me to thank you. Neil, I loved your your postmark show. You shared about Wrestling Challenge and Superstars, like shows which I grew up on. I resonated. It resonated so much with me what you said there. I was just like listening to it. I think I heard it twice. And Wai, like, I don't even know where to start. But like, I feel like I had so many moments with everyone on the website already. Like the things you talk about and the levels, Jordan, like the show about music, like all of those things were so important for me this year. But I was also able to understand and really learn about how community can help me.
I just want to say like thank you for opening up right now because you know like most of the people we've spoken to at this point we've kind of heard from we kind of know, but Asher, as far as I remember, this is the first time you've appeared on one of these shows or maybe any of our shows, so to hear that perspective on a lot of the stuff that we've been doing, including Neil's postmark show, like is very enlightening to us. So thank you for providing that service for us, and thank you for sharing some of your story.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Asher, and it's great to meet you. My hope is that every micro community around the world offers communities and conversation like this. Again, I mean, mental health is foundational to the experience of every person, and it makes sense where you found this community because of your interest and passion for pro wrestling. That was the cultural hook that brought you in. And then a show like this offered a bridge to maybe, make you interested or maybe more open-minded to some of the topics that we share about and mental health more generally. That really has been the aim, at least for me, with a project like this. So I appreciate you reflecting that back to us. And I really think this is going to be the trend because I've seen it, especially being involved in the mental health space for well over a decade now. I'm seeing now how quickly all kinds of different cultural communities and businesses for altruistic, but also for financial reasons, are now engaging more publicly around mental health. And I think that's a net positive for all of us.
For me, like when it comes to at least like, you know, picking topics for the show or even like the concept of the show itself, like I'm relatively new, like, you know, to being exposed to like, you know, the mental health space, and even the concept of therapy. And in fact, that's something I'm going to actually be, you know, diving more personally into over the course of the next year. But I don't even necessarily think of like, you know, the show as like a mental health show. Like these are just human issues, you know, like these are just life things, and it's a chance for, I think, you know, myself and also people who listen to our wrestling podcast to be able to talk about things just outside of professional wrestling, which I sense a far bigger craving for than perhaps, you know, even coverage of like, you know, like an indie show here or there. It's we walk around with these things, whether or not like we consider ourselves aware of mental health or that sort of awareness. I mean, we live with all of this stuff, and it's relevant to most of us, I would say, if not all.
Totally. Which is why it's nice to continue normalizing this stuff. And I think a big aim for me was to not make it feel clinical or educational, or even overly serious. Of course, there's going to be times where to have more sincerity and to be more serious, it's called for and it's necessary, and that's the appropriate, mature response. But we can also have fucking fun doing this, and this can be playful. That was the point of having a whole episode around the concept of play. So yeah, I just my aim is to really normalize this, because to your point, Wai, what contributes to our mental health really is all of our experiences.
Totally. Yeah. It feels like this is a good place to wrap up. We're about to, I think, 80 minutes into the show, and again, I've had no idea exactly how this would go, but I've really enjoyed just having the amount of interaction from the people that we've heard, and sort of this loose format. So it's something maybe we can talk about whether or not we should dive back into the future. And let us know if you're listening to this, you couldn't make it here live with us today. If you listen to the podcast and if you have something to say, please chime in, leave a comment in the forum.postwrestling.com. If you are a patron, if you're not, we have everybody has access now to the forum. So just leave a comment if you want to, or join the Discord, of course, where there's a wellness policy channel, or send a message to all of you guys. If you want to reach out specifically, I want to open the space up right now for anybody who wants to maybe advertise their social media, to let people get in touch with them. And maybe we'll start with you, Neil.
Well, yeah, I mean, my Twitter is very boring because I am subject to a social media policy at work because I work in a political environment, which means I basically just don't touch anything apart from saying how good the latest post wrestling podcast or Up Next podcast, or check out or retweeting Dickie's latest work or whatever. But if you really want to, it's at Neil, that's spelled with an A, Neal, Flanagan, Flanagan.
How about you, Dickie?
Thank you, Neil. And thank you, Scrump, as well. I know you said some kind words. I didn't want to interrupt you. What a nice guy Scrump is, no matter what he says about other t-shirt companies. I'm Dickie Bird Media on Twitter and Instagram. I use it as a place to show something that's I've recently done or something like that. So it's a good place just to follow for that stuff. I don't opine about whether Hangman Page and Bryan Danielson's 60-minute draw was crap or not, and stuff like that. I let other people do that. But what is kind of funny is that I'm actually today in about an hour and a half on my twitch.tv/Dickie Bird Media. I'm holding a number one contenders elimination chamber on WWE 2K20 to determine, like I said, the number one contender for the Post Wrestling Discord Metamucil Championship, whatever it's called. This is something that's so weird and so in our community. I don't expect anybody to listen to this to check it out because it's already been and gone unless you're sort of live on here. But I do some shenanigans like that. But Dickie Bird Media on Twitch, but also, join the Discord, jump in. It's a great place for community. You don't need to be totally involved. You can just read what people are writing, and there's lots of topics going on. So I believe that is postwrestling.com/Discord, I think. Yeah.
And this is a great time to recognize both Phil and Eric for their contributions to that Discord. I have spent a significant amount of time this past year for my first time on the Discord platform. And it takes guys like them to be really effective moderators to make it such a rich experience for me and many others.
Sorry, I just went on the Discord where Jordan posted a photo of a cup of water with whipped cream on it. What is that?
I found it on the internet. There was some thread about orders at Starbucks. That was my contribution.
Okay, a lot of conversation about it after the fact. So
you've never gotten a water with whip?
No, I don't think so. Interesting. Water add whip. Okay, so that's maybe just some of a teaser of some of the great nonsensical content you might get off of Jordan Goodman from Discord. I open the floor to anybody else who maybe wants to publicize and open up where they be able to be found.
Can I go quickly?
Yeah, of course.
Hanzi83, HANZI83. If anyone's if you ever feel like you're having a mental episode and you need to talk to somebody, Like, you know what I mean? I might not always be the best guy, but I can try to like help guide anyone through any irrational thought you might have. Sometimes, sometimes like you don't know what to do with your irrational thoughts. So if you need someone to talk to, like I'm always there, kind of like just doing my own thing. I'm always self-reflecting. So, but again, like, I've been listening. So I haven't been chiming in, but I didn't want to chime with other callers and all that kind of stuff. But I really enjoyed from what I heard. I can't wait to listen to the whole thing when this is uploaded. But again, guys, thank you for having me on and letting me speak. And it's good to hear all you guys like kind of give your stories and everything like that, because it's a good way to connect, man. So I really do. I know this is sounding like a broken record, but like I really do appreciate the space that you guys are putting in. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people don't want to do these kind of talks because everyone gravitates towards like, oh, let's all be negative. Like I'm not saying you shouldn't be negative if there's like something that's happening with you. Like, you know what I mean? You need to express yourself and all that. But like just promoting like nonstop negativity where we're all at each other's throats. You know what I mean? It's like kind of refreshing to have a place where you're not really feeling that obligated to have to like be contentious with other people, if that makes sense.
Agreed, Hansi. That type of negativity you're referring to, at least to me, is entirely not interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Thank you guys again. I'll just be in the chat. I'll be in the Zoom room. But thank you guys so much for letting me come on here, man.
No problem. And as mentioned, Hansi is the next guest on Postmarks. That's available on the Post Wrestling Café feed. It is free and available to everybody if you just go to postwrestlingcafe.com. That'll come out Saturday evening. So look forward to that. I want to thank everybody for joining us, especially you, Jordan Goodman, for proposing the show and joining me for the better part of this year, getting to topics like these.
My pleasure, man. Brandon, I'm wondering, have we gotten the last laugh pod.com yet? We'll take that as a yes.
Great response.
I do. Professor Kevin was with us for the majority of the show, communicating through the chat. I do want to share what he wrote earlier on in the episode. This comes from the professor. His name is Kevin. The wellness policy provided an opportunity to reflect on very personal and intimate subjects, but in a group setting. I'm grateful for the show because of the growth and change it has helped bring about in my own life. Thanks to Wai and Jordan for hosting, and to everyone else who has shared throughout the past year. This has all been especially important as we continue to navigate this shitty global pandemic. Let's keep the wellness going in 2022. So thank you very much, Professor Kevin. Yeah,
thank you. And man, I really hope that come the new year, we aren't heading back to like a regression in terms of what's open and what's not. But at least like as we've seen, there are some benefits to perhaps when our normal daily lives being interrupted, at least maybe we can look a bit more inward and rely on our online communities a bit more. So I want to thank you all for that. And I also wanted to mention that this will be the last wellness policy on the free Post Wrestling feed. So going forward, starting in January, we will be putting this on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed. But much like Postmarks, it'll be free. So you just have to go to postwrestlingcafe.com and you will be able to find these shows for absolutely free. They just won't automatically appear on the free feed. And for me, that's more of an effort of consolidating all of the community-based podcasts that we do into one feed. This, of course, along with Postmarks and a lot of the other work that we do. Whereas we're keeping maybe the main feed a bit more news-based. So just a reminder, if you want to listen to next month's edition of the Wellness Policy, follow us on social media and follow those links. Or if you want to support Post Wrestling, just become a patron at really any amount, and I believe you will get a dedicated RSS feed that you can input into your Post Wrestling or podcast app of choice.
Before we head out, I'm curious if you're willing, Asher and Chris Elliott, would you like to share how anyone could connect with you guys?
I am, like I said, I pretty much eliminated most of my social media accounts in the
What's your home
last
address
year.
For somebody?
Yeah, you can snail mail me, but I have like a group of friends on Discord. I'm on Discord sometime. And I'll check out your Post Wrestling channel.
Okay, well, we hope you will join us again here on the Wellness Policy, and maybe we can interact with you then. What about you, Chris?
You can follow me on Twitter at Chris_Elliot84. That's about it. I've got an Instagram. It's the same thing, but I don't post on there anymore. I posted like 5 pictures of my kids, and that's about it.
You guys are far healthier than all of us, I think. You know,
my Twitter use used to be quite bad. I would always jump into stupid arguments and stuff like that. But one of the things that the pandemic has kind of made me is it's made me realize that there's better things to be doing than jumping in arguments, and I think leading a better life in terms of my social media is a bit more healthy, and spending time on people that actually deserve that attention rather than just random trolls with online.
He is.
Can I say something? Chris Wai. Chris is a very skilled live blogger of sports, particularly football. So I'm serious. If you don't happen to have access to the TV or the stream of a big match, get in the Discord and follow what Chris is telling you. He's excellent.
Stop it now. I'm blushing.
Aye.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for joining us, all of you. And this is just, I guess, some of the sampling of maybe some of the interactions you might get in the Post Wrestling Discord. postwrestling.com/Discord. He is at Jordan Beatwell on Twitter. Jordan, do we have an idea of what we don't even know what we'll be talking about next month yet, right?
We haven't talked about that yet.
We haven't. So, but you can bet we'll be back at some point in January for the next edition of the Wellness Policy. Do we have a sign off for this? And Jordan, if we don't, would you like to make one up right now?
I've done nearly 100 episodes of another podcast over the years called Chaka Croissants. I actually have a sign off for those shows, and it's something that we actually mentioned today. So we will go out on this first year of Post Wrestling's The Wellness Policy with me simply saying thank you and please be kind to yourself. And then I hit the cowbell 8 times, something like that.